I can still remember that phone call. The phone cut through the night, and the voice on the other end spoke words that shattered my life. A car, a collision, an accident. Emily was killed instantly. I ran out of the house barefoot, but at the hospital, all I could do was see her body. She lay there in a cold room, as if she'd only fallen asleep. I held her hand and could not grasp how to go on. Everything was gone. Every plan, every conversation, every promise, none of it mattered anymore. All I had left was Grace. She was only 5. She did not fully understand what had happened, but she saw my silence, my empty eyes. That evening she hugged me and whispered, "Daddy, is Mommy coming back?" I squeezed her so tightly it hurt and forced the words out. "No, sweetheart. It's just us now." From that day on, I lived only for her. Mornings meant preschool drop-offs. Evenings were dinners, stories, lullabies. I was drained, but I never let myself collapse. The house no longer rang with Emily's laughter or the smell of her morning coffee. But there was Grace's voice, her endless questions, her soft breathing at night. That was why I got up every morning. Months blurred together. Work, caring for my daughter, the occasional awkward talk with friends who did not know what to say. I locked my grief inside and put Emily's photos in the closet so I would not have to meet her eyes. My world had narrowed to one duty: protect Grace and carry her through this. One evening I sat by her bed. She was asleep, and I caught myself just staring at her face. Her cheeks glowing in the moonlight, her small hand on top of the blanket. I realized that if it were not for her, I would not have made it. Every breath I took, every step I managed, it was all for her. I was not looking for anyone. No women, no dates. My heart had died with Emily. But time moved on, and life threw me into a meeting that changed everything. I remember that night. A corner cafe, a cup of black coffee, a pile of papers. I was trying to work when a woman sat down at the next table. She smiled, ordered a latte, and started talking. Light voice, quick laugh, the way her hair caught the light. Her name was Rachel. At first, I did not think much of it. Just conversation. But she looked straight into my eyes, asked questions, cracked jokes. And for the first time in so long, I caught myself smiling. It felt strange. A part of me felt guilty. How could I smile when Emily was gone? Rachel was different. Lively, warm, easy to be around. After a few meetings, I introduced her to Grace. My daughter clung to me at first, wary, but Rachel tried to be gentle. She brought little gifts, drew with her, took her to the park. I watched and thought, maybe life was giving me another chance. Maybe it would be easier for Grace to have a woman's presence in the house. Maybe I could breathe again without the constant weight pressing down on me. We started seeing each other more often. Rachel was there when I came home exhausted. She laughed at my dark jokes, pulled me out of the house, reminded me that I was not only a father and a widower, but still a man. I began to believe this was not an accident. That fate had handed me another shot at love, even after so much loss. I saw Grace slowly warming up to her. The house had a woman's voice again, music the scent of perfume. It felt like the darkness was finally lifting. I was wrong. Rachel slipped into my life so easily, as if she already knew the way. She did not rush, but step by step she claimed her place in our home. First short visits, then dinners, walks, trips for the three of us. I could see Grace gradually stop hiding behind my back, though she still flinched a little when Rachel tried to hug her. Rachel had a smile that made the whole world seem brighter. At cafes, waiters hurried to her table. In the park, strangers turned to look. She knew how to say things in a way that made you want to keep listening. I caught myself looking forward to every meeting. It all felt right. The three of us at the movies, at the zoo, at the farmer's market. Rachel laughed at the way Grace carefully picked apples as if she were choosing the fate of the harvest. In those moments I thought, maybe this was what a new life looked like. A year after we first met, I asked Rachel to move in. She agreed almost immediately. Music filled the house again. Rachel brought in clothes, makeup, little things that claimed space in every room. Grace watched quietly, cautious, but said nothing. At first Rachel tried to play the part. She bought Grace toys, sat down to draw with her, even read bedtime stories, though her voice sounded unsure, as if she did not really see the point. Still, I noticed the effort and thanked her for it. With friends, I stopped being the widower and became a man with someone new. People congratulated me, clapped me on the back, said, "You deserve to be happy." I believed them. Rachel looked the part, beautiful, energetic, alive. Grace often asked, "Daddy, will Rachel live with us forever now?" I'd stroke her hair and say, "I think so, sweetheart." She'd nod, but there was always something in her eyes I could not quite read. Months passed, and I noticed the first cracks. At night, Rachel would smile at me, but her quick glances at Grace told another story. Her gestures had a trace of irritation, subtle but real. One night, I came home and saw Rachel trying to put Grace to bed. My daughter sat on the edge of the bed, frowning, while Rachel stood with her phone in hand, tapping her foot impatiently. "I am tired, Grace," she snapped. "Put yourself to bed." When I walked in, Rachel plastered on a smile. "Everything is fine. Just a long day." I brushed it off at first. Everyone gets tired, but something inside me stirred. A couple of weeks later, I overheard Rachel on the phone with a friend. She laughed and said, "I never signed up to be a babysitter. You know me." Silence, then more laughter. She spotted me in the doorway and quickly changed the subject. Grace started crawling into my bed more often. At night, I'd feel her slip under the covers, press against me, and lie awake for a long time. I thought it was still about Emily, her grief, her loss. I was wrong. Rachel kept playing the role. To our friends, she was the perfect woman who breathed life back into me. To me, she was my salvation from loneliness. But between her smile and the way she looked at Grace was a growing crack. I tried to convince myself it was temporary, that Rachel would adjust, that things would settle. But one evening, watching her stare at Grace across the dinner table, I understood. It was not indifference. It was the look of someone who saw a child as an obstacle. And in that moment, for the first time, I felt real fear. Sometimes I'd drift back to those nights when everything seemed on the verge of collapse. Sitting by Grace's hospital bed, staring at the 4 lines, listening to the steady beep of monitors. A simple cold had turned into complications, and I was terrified I might lose her too. The doctors reassured me, but every night I fell asleep in that chair, thinking I might wake up completely alone. When it hit me, my breath, my strength, my life, all of it belonged to her. I had to do everything possible to make sure this little girl grew up safe, with a future. I worked without weekends. Picked up every project at the firm, stayed late, anything to save for a house in the suburbs. I wanted Grace to grow up with a backyard in a quiet neighborhood with a good school nearby. I forgot what it felt like to rest. But every time she smiled at me, I knew it was worth it. I sold the car I'd loved in my younger years to pay for her medical bills and her education. I gave up the gym, gave up nights out with friends, gave up the life I had before the accident. Everything funneled into one goal, Grace as happiness. At night, I'd sit at my desk and plan her trust fund. I wanted to make sure that even if something happened to me, she'd be secure. I did not trust fate, not after the road that took Emily. I trusted only numbers and signed contracts. When I met Rachel, I thought she would see the cost of these sacrifices. She saw the house, the way I lived, heard the stories of nights by Grace's hospital bed. She listened quietly, nodded, sometimes squeezed my hand. I took that as understanding. Grace grew, and I saw Emily in her, her eyes, her smile, her stubbornness. Every step reminded me why I had to stay strong. I would never let anyone devalue that. But over time, I began to notice Rachel saw things differently. To her, it was not sacrifice or devotion. It was a burden I had chosen for myself. One day, she said something that cut deep. "You live only for her. When do you live for yourself?" I answered simply, "I already live for myself. Now, my life is Grace." She fell silent, but in her eyes I caught it, disagreement, irritation. I ignored it then. I believed she'd accept the rules of our life and time. But everything I had done, everything I had lost and endured for my daughter, became the backdrop against which Rachel's coldness felt sharper than a blade. I had given too much to let anyone erase Grace as future. At the time, I did not yet know how far this would go, that the woman I trusted would one day turn on me completely. But the seeds had already been planted, and they had begun to grow. The first warning did not come as a shout. It was quiet, almost invisible, but I caught it. Grace asked Rachel to help her with a puzzle. My daughter sat on the rug, spreading out colorful pieces from the box. Rachel knelt beside her, but after a couple of minutes, she was scrolling through her phone, waving a hand dismissively. Do it yourself. You're not a baby anymore. I heard it from the kitchen. Just a small thing, maybe, but in her voice was an impatience I had not heard before. From then on, the little signs multiplied. Rachel started coming home later, tired, irritated. She'd sit at the table without a word, pour herself wine, eyes glued to her phone. Grace would try to tell her about her day, but Rachel's replies were curt, distracted, if she answered at all. One night, I walked into our bedroom and found Rachel with her phone. She quickly flipped it face down, like she was hiding something. I said nothing, but noticed her fingers tightening on the pillow. A week later, we all went to the park. It was a warm Sunday. Grace reached out for Rachel's hand, but Rachel pulled away almost instantly, as if my daughter's touch was an inconvenience. Grace ran to me, pressed against my leg. Rachel caught my stare and forced a smile. I am just tired. Do not take it the wrong way. I nodded, but unease stirred inside me. Then came the phone calls. Rachel would step onto the balcony or lock herself in the bathroom. I heard laughter, whispers, fragments like, "Stop it, I see a knot right now." If I knocked, she decalled back. "Just a minute, I'm busy." I wanted to believe it was work, until one night I woke up and heard her voice. She sat in the living room in pajamas, whispering into her phone, "Yeah, I miss you too. Tomorrow, same place." I froze in the doorway. She did not notice me. My chest tightened, but I did not confront her. I went back to bed and lay awake, staring at the ceiling. From then on, I watched more closely. Rachel started dressing up more often, even for quick errands. New dresses, makeup for a coffee with friends. She came home late, carrying the scent of someone else's cologne. Grace began complaining too. "She yells at me, Daddy." "For nothing," she whispered when I tucked her in. I reassure her. Rachel's just tired. But deep down I knew, tiredness did not explain the coldness. And then, another night, I heard her again. "Chris, I see a not stay long. He might wake up." I stood in the hall. That name carved itself into my memory. Chris, a man I'd never heard of before. This was not just fatigue or irritation. This was the first crack in her mask. I stopped trusting words. Only facts mattered now. Proof I could hold, save, and use when the time came. It began with bank statements. I rarely checked them, trusting Rachel with everyday expenses. But one evening, when she went out to meet friends, I sat at my laptop. A few transfers stood out immediately. Not huge sums, but regular, go to name I did not recognize. Scrolling further, I saw more. Cash withdrawals on the same nights she claimed to be shopping. Rachel was spending more, yet nothing new appeared at home. I took screenshots, saved them in a folder. The next day, I noticed her phone left on the couch. Rachel was in the bathroom. I had less than a minute. I did not dig, just checked the recent messages. The first name on the screen, Chris. The texts were short but damning. "Same room tomorrow. You looked amazing. Do not worry, he would not find out." I snapped a photo of the screen and put the phone back exactly where it was. My heart pounded so loud, I swore she'd hear from the bathroom. At work the next day, I could not focus. Those words burned in my mind. Rachel was lying to my face, lying to Grace. She was building a second life, confident I'd never notice. A week later, it all crystallized. She said she was meeting Jessica, but in her purse, I found receipts from a downtown Chicago hotel. The date and time matched her girl night. That evening, I said nothing. Rachel walked around the house cheerful, talking about a new dress she wanted. I just watched her and thought, how many times had she smiled at me like this, fresh from another man's bed? Grace sat beside me, drawing with her crayons. I looked at her and knew She had one childhood, one life. And I would not let Rachel shatter it. I saved the receipts, the statements, the photos. I created a locked file on my computer. The evidence was no longer whispers. It was real. Rachel was not just cheating. She was planning something bigger. A plan where Grace and I were obstacles. And the scariest part, that plan was only beginning to take shape. I could not keep silent anymore. The anger inside me needed answers. I wanted to hear her words, see her eyes when I confronted her directly. After dinner one night, Grace went to her room. Rachel sat on the couch with a glass of wine, scrolling her phone. I sat across from her. "Rachel, we need to talk." She raised an eyebrow, still scrolling. "Sounds serious. What's up?" I placed the bank statement on the table. "These transfers. Care to explain?" Rachel glanced at the paper and shrugged. "Really? You going to nitpick?" "I spend money because I want to live, not count every penny." I stared at her, waiting. She did not blink. "And one more thing," I added. "Chris. Who is he?" The name hit the room like a hammer. Rachel froze for a beat, then laughed. "You serious? You rereading my texts?" "David, that is pathetic." I did not smile. "You meeting him? At hotels?" I found receipts. Rachel slammed her glass down and stood up. "Enough with the interrogations. You've always been so controlling." "This is not control," I said quietly. "It is fact." She stepped closer, leaned down, eyes locked on mine. "You know what? I never asked to raise someone else's kid. You chose this life." The words hit harder than the affair itself. In that instant, it was clear. To her, Grace was nothing. My sacrifices, my years of devotion, worthless in her eyes. I did not move. Inside, everything clenched tight, but outside, I stayed calm. Rachel waited for a blow-up, shouting rage. Instead, she got silence. She scoffed, grabbed her glass, and stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door. I sat there in the quiet, hearing Grace humming to herself in the other room. Her small voice cut through the dark heavier than anything Rachel could say. That night I understood. This was not just about betrayal. It was about my daughter. Rachel was willing to erase her life for her own pleasure. I did not know how yet, but I had decided this story would not end the way Rachel planned. Rachel had always thrived on attention. She knew how to enter a room and own it. This time the stage was Jessica's house, a party on Chicago's North Side. Music, laughter, champagne glasses clinking. The kind of crowd that loved to talk about themselves and be admired. I arrived with Rachel, holding Grace's hand. Within 10 minutes, it was clear my wife had no intention of being by my side. She floated among the guests, laughing louder than anyone, letting men kiss her cheek a little too long. Grace got tired and asked to sit. I settled her on a couch in the corner and went for water. When I came back, I froze. Rachel stood in the center of the room, talking to Chris. I knew him instantly. The man from her phone from those messages I'd saved. Taller than me, sharp suit, smug smile. Rachel rested her hand on his shoulder, laughing like the whole world revolved around them. I did not interrupt. I just watched. Around us, whispers spread. Someone pulled out a phone and started recording. People noticed the looks, the touches, the body language that said everything. Jessica came over, her voice low. "You see this, right?" I nodded. Rachel turned and caught my eyes. For a heartbeat, she froze. Then, as if in defiance, she grabbed a glass from a waiter and clinked it against Chris's. A moment later, they walked outside together, hand in hand. Grace looked up at me. "Daddy, can we go home?" I squeezed her little hand. "Yes, sweetheart. Soon." I waited until Rachel returned. She walked in as if nothing had happened, her face glowing with wine and attention. She slid onto the couch beside me, draped an arm around my shoulders, and whispered, "You too serious. Relax." I stayed silent. Inside I was burning, but on the surface I was ice. This was not just an affair anymore. It was humiliation, in public, in front of everyone. Rachel was not hiding. She was showing the world I had no place beside her. I saw the looks from the room, the smirks half hidden behind glasses. I knew the video would spread, not just to me, but to everyone. And that was her first mistake. After that party, I had no illusions left. Rachel had stopped even trying to hide. But I needed more than rumors or whispers. I needed hard proof. And then it came. The video landed in my inbox a couple of days later. Shot by one of the guests, a friend of Jessica's. On screen, Rachel and Chris walked out of the house arm in arm. They kissed beside his car, hungry, reckless, with no thought of being seen. Their hands roamed each other's backs, their bodies pressed together. No one could deny it. I watched it over and over, each replay twisting the knife deeper. Then I saved it to a flash drive, backed it up to the cloud. It was not just proof of an affair. It was a symbol. Rachel was no longer my wife. She was another man's woman. But the story did not stop there. A week later, I got an audio file. The same person who filmed the video had overheard them in the parking lot. On the recording, Rachel's voice was clear, her laugh unmistakable. If we move the money now, he would not have time to block the trust. Grace would not even know what happened. Chris's voice came through calm, almost lazy. As long as we leave before he notices. I froze, listening. Each word struck like a hammer. This was not just infidelity. It was theft. Rachel planned to steal my daughter's future and vanish with her lover. I sat at my desk, hitting play and stop again and again. At first there was rage, then emptiness, then a cold clarity. I called my lawyer, Mr. Thompson. I have evidence. And it's ironclad. That evening we met. I laid the flash drive on his desk, spread out receipts, statements, screenshots. Thompson examined everything quietly, jotting notes. This is more than enough, he said finally. We freeze the accounts, lock down Grace's trust, and file the divorce papers. I nodded. In that moment, I knew Rachel had already lost. She was still laughing with Chris, still convinced she was in control. But she had no idea I was holding the facts that would burn her mask to ash. And for the first time in months, I felt not pain but peace. I stopped asking why. I stopped searching for explanations. Rachel had given me all the answers I needed. She chose Chris. She chose betrayal. She chose to rob my daughter's future. Now was my turn. In Thompson's office lay a full folder. The video, the recording, bank transfers, hotel receipts. All neatly labeled and bound. He flipped through them and said, "David, this will tear her story apart before she even steps into court." I nodded. What's next? First, he said, raising a finger, we freeze the trust. She would not touch a dime. Second, we cancel her access to the accounts. Third, we file for divorce and seek sole custody. As he spoke, a calm settled over me. I was no longer the husband cornered by betrayal. I was the man making the moves. That night, I changed every password, shut down her online access, canceled her transfers. Rachel had no idea the game was already over. She kept sneaking off for calls, slipping out in the evenings, coming home reeking of someone else's cologne. Grace was blissfully unaware. She still brought me her drawings, asked for bedtime stories. And I promised myself I would stay cold and steady for her. 2 days later, Rachel tried to withdraw a large sum. My phone buzzed. Transaction declined. I could almost see her face when the card was rejected. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to smile. That night she came home irritated, tossing her bag down. "Damn bank," she muttered. Their system froze again. I stayed silent. I knew the truth. Later I met Thompson again. He slid papers across the desk. "It's all ready. Sign here," and we reset in motion. I picked up the pen and signed. It did not feel like ending a marriage. It felt like beginning a war, one I was already winning. Thompson studied me. "You want this quiet, or do you want everyone to see?" My answer came fast. Public. She humiliated me in front of people. Now people will see the truth. We shook hands. Driving home, I felt calm. Rachel thought she was in control. Chris thought he had one. But I had a plan. Cold, precise, final. And by the time they realized, it would be too late. That night we went to dinner in River North. Rachel insisted on meeting friends, said we needed to be seen. She booked the table, put on a red dress, painted her face like she was walking a red carpet. As we entered the room, I saw heads turn. Rachel walked tall beside me, smiling like a queen. To everyone else, she was the picture of a woman who had it all. No one knew her cards were frozen, her scheme collapsing. 10 of us gathered at the table. Wine flowed, chatter buzzed, laughter filled the air. Rachel dazzled, telling stories, laughing louder than anyone. At one point I glanced toward the bar, and there he was. Chris, sitting alone, pretending it was coincidence. But when their eyes met, Rachel's lit up for just a second. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. When the main course arrived, the table quieted. I pulled a folder from my bag and set it down. Heads turned. I want you all to see something, I said evenly. Rachel stiffened. David, what the hell is this? I opened the folder, spreading photos across the table. Rachel and Chris, wrapped around each other by his car. The kiss in the parking lot. Bank transfers. Hotel receipts. I laid them out one by one. Silence swallowed the table. Rachel paled, then forced a smirk. You really doing this? Making a scene? I looked her in the eye, slowly slipped my ring from my finger, set it down on the pile of evidence, and said, this is not a scene. This is the end. You're no longer part of my family. No shouting. No drama. Just cold words, heavier than any scream. Chris shifted at the bar, unable to hold my gaze. He hunched his shoulders, lifted his glass like it could hide him. Rachel looked around, but the faces at the table were blank, silent. Not one person defended her. I stood, took my jacket, and turned to the others. Sorry to ruin your evening, but something had to end tonight. Grace was at home with the sitter. As I walked out of the restaurant, I breathed deeper than I had in months. Rachel thought she had shamed me. But now, the whole room had seen her for what she really was. A week later, we sat in Cook County Court. Rachel arrived in a black suit, hair perfect, sunglasses on indoors. Chris did not show. I watched her clutch her purse too tightly, trying to mask her nerves. The judge flipped through the documents Thompson had assembled. The video, the photos, the audio recording. Every piece of evidence stacked against her. Rachel tried to argue, called it a setup, a jealous husband-esque scheme. But her words crumbled against hard facts. He sat silent. No arguments, no raised voice. I let my lawyer do the talking. Each new page hit the table like a nail, sealing her fate. When it came to custody, Thompson stood. Your Honor, my client's wife repeatedly expressed contempt for his daughter, planned to steal her trust fund, and intended to flee. We have direct evidence. The judge turned to Rachel. Do you have anything to say? For the first time, she faltered. I just wanted stability. It was a mistake. Her voice cracked. I watched, knowing it was over. The ruling came down clear. Grace's custody awarded solely to me. Rachel barred from the trust. Divorce finalized. I signed the papers and felt a weight lift off my chest. The burden I carried for months was gone. Rachel stormed out first, heels striking the marble floor. I saw only her back as she disappeared. Thompson placed a hand on my shoulder. It's done. She will not touch your daughter or her future again. I nodded. 2 days later he called. David, another update. Rachel tried to fence her things through Chris, but the deal fell through. We shut it all down. I was not surprised. Betrayal once means betrayal again. But now she had nothing. No money, no reputation, no rights to even come near Grace. That evening I came home. Grace sat at the table, drawing. She looked up, smiling. Daddy, is it just us now? I knelt beside her, hugged her close, and said, Yes, sweetheart, just us. She grinned and went back to her paper. She'd drawn a small family, a father and daughter, hand in hand. And I knew this was what it had all been for. The house grew quiet, not the suffocating silence of grief, but a calm, clean quiet. I cleared Rachel's things out right after court. Her clothes, her makeup, her clutter gone. What lingered was the scent of Grace's shampoo, the freshness of a home that finally belonged to us again. I walked through each room and felt it. This was our house once more. Mine and my daughter's. No masks, no fake smiles. Rachel never called, never wrote. She vanished as quickly as she arrived. Maybe she tried to start over with Chris. Maybe not. It did not matter. Let them live their little game somewhere else. In my life, they were finished. Grace noticed the difference quickly. She laughed more, invited friends over again. Her drawings stopped being dark and turned bright, yellows, blues, greens. She no longer crept into my room at night. She slept peacefully. Sometimes I caught myself thinking about the past, about the way Rachel had walked in my life, beautiful, radiant, seeming like salvation. But it had all been a lie. She had not come for love. She came for comfort and money. And when the truth came out, I did not beg. I did not try to salvage what was worthless. I ended it myself. Now my mornings were spent packing Grace's lunch, driving her to school. Evenings we cooked together, sometimes sat on the porch watching the sun sink. I did tell her, we were going to be fine. And for the first time, I believed it without doubt. Rachel and Chris stayed in the past. Erased the moment, I slid my ring off and left it on that table. The marriage was dead. The love was dead. But Grace and I survived. I did not look back. I did not need answers. Everything had been said. Everything had been done. This was the end. Cold, clean, with no way back. And that is where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, do not forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.